So the paper is open for questions, comments, clarifications. Feel free. You have even, oh, you need that. Yes, sir.
Curious, one of the things that you mentioned was the need for infrastructure development. Are you doing anything to work actively? I'm sure you're doing some things, but what are you doing to work actively with other sectors, transportation, communication, energy? Because farming on a larger scale or a more intense scale is energy intensive. It produces a lot of toxins and environmental issues. Are you looking at coordinating the cross-sector, multi-sector engagement?
Yes, that's why, remember I mentioned this CAADP, the CAADP. The C stands for comprehensive. So this is not, and this is what we have been doing across Africa. This is not only for the agriculture ministry. In a country like Rwanda, actually the whole plan was a joint initiative between the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Agriculture. Because at the end of the day, it's the Ministry of Finance who will be signing the check. So yes, we have to include, as I mentioned, the Ministry of Land, the Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Infrastructure, Ministry of Energy, and everything that is close related to agriculture.
I believe your 2009 paper with two of your colleagues dealt, in fact, in the case of DRC, with the issue of infrastructure, you know, transportation. What's the best way to proceed in order to facilitate the kind of, you know, issue?
Yes. Actually, the problem was that the government and its donors are involved in a huge infrastructure development, but somehow the agriculture is not part of the thing. So we wrote this paper to show the impact that agriculture, this infrastructure can have on agriculture, and how they can design this road network in such a way that it's also helpful for, 70% of the population relies on agriculture. I told one of the ministers, I'm not a politician, but if 70% of my constituents rely on one sector, I'll invest heavily on that sector. That's, yes.
First, thank you for the talk. And I guess I'm wondering, to what do you attribute the agricultural decline, or the decline in agricultural productivity? We focus on, independence. Basically, you said from 1961 on, there's been a decline in terms of productivity, but I don't think it's obvious why. Do you attribute it to conflict? Do you attribute it to the long kleptocracy of Mobutu? To what do you attribute it? And I guess my other question has to do with, what role do you think indigenous knowledge systems should play in sort of coming up with a solution?
Yeah, on the first one, there are many reasons. I think the first is lack of governance. The DRC is also known for its rich mining potential. And I think at some point we just lost track of agriculture because we were getting so much out of the mining sector. And
emphasis shift.
And we just, so even
in the rural area, you say 70% are agricultural, but even in those agricultural areas, people are going to make their money.
Absolutely. Teachers are leaving schools to go to mining sector. That's the case in Bushmai. We're going for diamond instead of
quick.
Yes. But on a more technical scale, technical aspect, I think it's the first one is the issue with low yield. Why? Because the agricultural research, which used to be very prominent in the 70s, some of the the variety that went to Côte d'Ivoire has become the leader in cocoa. Which crop is that?
Cocoa yam?
Cocoa. Yes.
Yeah. What kind of crop? A root?
Yes. So
Cocoa,
was developed.
cocoa yam, which is a kind of taro?
I think so. Yeah. Was developed in the DRC. Malaysia, was now one of the leading export in palm oil.
Right.
The variety that went to Malaysia was developed in the DRC. But if you go back today, Yangambi,
which was one of the large world unknown agricultural research center.
There's nothing. So that's
just
one.
the buildings.
Yes. And then you have a very low use of improved seed, fertilizer. I mean, then, extension, we are doing another study on extension. There is none as of now. So, but again, I put all of that on the lack of governance. Because you need someone to oversee all these things. Now, knowledge. Yes, and I think that's the research, whatever is still being conducted now, agricultural research, is completely disconnected from that indigenous knowledge. And you cannot, you cannot introduce a new technology without taking into account. Just, quickly to tell you something, we know that in DRC, the use of fertilizer is very low for maize. And then we try to figure out why. Everybody knows that if you use fertilizer for maize, you get high yield. And actually the reason is that if you use fertilizer, the maize, how do I call it again?
Stalk?
Yes, becomes so heavy that at some point it will break the branches of this. Now, if you don't have a storage facility, you will lose all your crop because you use fertilizer. And these local farmers know that. They refuse to use fertilizer.
It also invites insect damage if you have a lot of nitrogen.
Yes, yes. And they have no post-harvest technology, no storage facility, so they prefer, they leave their product on the field for, a potential buyer to come and to buy. So we need to use that local knowledge.
So during the colonial era, colonial marketing boards, they came and collected
Oh yeah.
But also,
there was also the transportation,
yes,
which is a major factor. If you look at the map of the Congo again, what you're going to notice is that numerous rivers, there are hundreds, some people say 1,000, we don't know for sure, but huge, water everywhere. So you can go from one community to another, city to another, via the river.
that's right.
There was a transportation, a river and transportation system that was owned by the government, a la European type of economics, and so that they transported the people, they transported goods. There were also the few roads, that were not necessarily paved, but you could go from one major city to another and so on, and you had trucks and you had companies that were transporting this. And then the organized Ministry of Agriculture, with sometimes sort of the equivalent of slave labor, they were able to to produce, and the local producers were able to sell because there was a market. In 1968, Mobutu proclaimed that, if I recall that correctly, that this was the year of agriculture. So much so that in the Kivus, they were producing meat, namely, cattle, potatoes, and so on, some of the best. But no transportation, and guess what? We were importing potatoes far afield from South Africa to come to Congo when we could have gotten them from Kivu. And on and on. So this is just a snapshot of the kind of neglect that took place during that period. So, and from there on, the rest is get rich forget about it.
Well,
Development.
and during the colonial period, the transportation was directed to the mines,
Yes.
not to civilian needs or to the agricultural sector, and huge amounts of food were imported because of the focus on the mining industry.
Right.
And I think that's why the first decade of independence, there was some improvement. And I don't know if you agree with Talon's assessment, whose ideas really seem quite compatible with yours. Eric Talon's
Yeah, he knows. Yeah.
and the only good article in the book on talking about the future of Belgium and Zaire, I felt was his. He felt that until 90, that most rural people had enough to eat. It was not, but that during the 90s, then everything went to hell, and presumably because of the conflict. I noticed you were talking about how different each province was from each other, but I noticed that the ones that weren't good are the ones where the violence and the armies and the NATO and Israeli interference is strongest. So, of course, one thing that can help would be to diplomatically, through negotiation, through the UN, get them out of there, because they and the multinationals are fueling the conflict. And then I think you have better production in Kivu. So fix agriculture by getting rid of the soldiers.
Very, very easy. That's simple. How do you get an 800-pound gorilla out of Eastern Congo?
Well, you make your own alliance that's stronger than the NATO alliance.
85 private companies, multinationals.